everybody. Welcome to Inside the Musical Mind. And today we have the one and only Tony West from Blacklist Union joining us. Hey, Tony, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good,
So
good.
you've got a lot of stuff going on. You've got Letters from the Psych Ward coming out in what, September? Is that right?
The full-length album comes out in September, yes.
Right. But you've already got a couple singles going strong, I see. You've got Queen of Everything a little while ago. It's already got a lot of views. And the title track just came out a little bit ago. And I looked earlier and you've already got like 200,000 views on that video.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what's happening. This shit's finally it's starting to ignite.
That's great. That's great news.
Yeah.
It's got to be a great feeling to, get new stuff out there and just immediately receiving a positive response.
Yeah, I know, especially after, such a long break because we had a really long break in between records. So,
Yeah, and that could be a killer in the music business.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's great news though. Some really good stuff on here, and I've got some questions for you because it's got a really great vibe on this, and it looks like you've got some. It's an album, from what I can tell, of kind of like personal catharsis and a journey of your own personal journey and that kind of thing. When you're writing, like on this album, was it more of a message and a personal thing, or was it like I've got this great riff idea? Like, what was the genesis of a lot of these songs?
well, lyrically, it's always very personal. Every Blacklist Union song that exists is about a personal experience in my life. But this record specifically, the last record we put out in 2015, Back to Momo, I wrote that with Todd Youth, who's an infamous guitar player, worked with all kinds of guys, and he was my friend since I was 15, and he died. So when he died, I went to the Amazon jungle in Peru with the Shipibo Indians and did ayahuasca 5 times and was on a heavy duty spiritual healing journey. And all of these songs are about that and healing. And then after that, after the ayahuasca 2018, then COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
So fucking that shut down everybody for a long time. And then Todd was my writing partner, and I had to find a new writing partner. And I always say, that's like trying to find a spouse. It's
Sure.
not an easy thing. So I ended up writing the music part of it with Chris Johnson, who's produced all 5 now of the Blacklist Union records.
Yeah, that's great that you were able to use him as a partner. And it looks like he was doing playing some bass and stuff on the album as well, right?
Yeah, he played bass on the record, and then we had basically a couple guys that play on the voice, the guitar player Hoffa, um, and then the drummer Nate from the voice, who are just incredible musicians, played on the record.
Yeah, it's got a great sound. It's modern, but it's raw, but it still sounds produced, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of our goal.
Yeah, well, mission accomplished.
Nice.
The You recorded this at East West Studios.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, so many musicians nowadays are recording from home and emailing back and forth bus and tracks and that kind of thing. What advantages did actually going to a studio provide you? Like, is it somewhere you feel more like, okay, now I'm in a creative environment, or is it too easy to get distracted at home, or what's the reasoning?
I mean, I'm a recording artist, I'm a performance artist, I'm not performing for myself at home. So, recording for me, there's a whole vibe, there's a whole energy that's missing. I mean, yeah, you can do demos at home, but when it comes time for a record, like, I like to do live drums. I want to have, our choices of what guitar heads to use, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, East West, there's been so many records, classic records done there. As a matter of fact, when we were doing Letters from the Psych Ward, all of a sudden this guy walks in and he's like, "What the hell is going on here? This sounds great." And it happened to be Mike Klink that produced Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah.
So, those kind of run-ins, that kind of environment, I have to be in that environment. I can't do a record at a home studio kind of deal. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, people are winning Grammys doing that shit, but for me, that's what works for me.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And the funny thing about that question I asked is, 15 years ago, it would have been the opposite question. It'd be like, why did you record this at home and not a studio? Like how much the tables have
Yeah.
flipped.
We did Back to Momo partly at East West as well, and then we did it at the Village Recorder, Jeff Greenberg's place. But when we did Back to Momo, Slayer was right next door to us, and Jeff Hanneman, who died, they did a whole record, dude, and it never came out. And I remember this last time I was, when we were doing Letters from the Psych Ward, I said to the staff there, I go, I was told I'm wrong, but like I remember last time I was here, Slayer did a record and it never came out. And they're like, oh yeah, it's sitting in our vault. I'm like, what the hell? Why isn't that out? So
Yeah.
little tid. I love those little tidbits of rock and roll. Like I live for that shit, so.
And there's probably a lot of Slayer fans who'd be like, what? There's a whole album sitting on a shelf that I haven't heard. Yeah.
Yeah. With Hanneman. Yeah.
With Hanneman. Right. It's like for those fans to be like saying, oh, by the way, there's a Van Halen record we never released.
Yeah, with Roth, but with Roth, not with
right.
Sammy.
They would go insane. Right. They would just go bananas.
Right.
Well, you're singing. What I like about it, going back to like Mike Clink and because Blacklist Union has that kind of swagger like Guns N' Roses of old did, and your singing has what I call swagger without posturing, if that makes sense. I see a lot of newer bands. It seems like they're putting on almost an act, and yours comes across as like not a persona, but like a genuine delivery. Is it something? Is it your genuine delivery, or is it a way you developed over time as an effective vocal style? Or
I really appreciate you saying this, and I appreciate that you've actually done your homework and know what you're talking about. I really appreciate that a lot, because so many people, I get the standard questions, how did you come up with the band name and shit like that.
yeah,
But I just answered a question the other day where it was similar, and I was like, look, my daughter was like, she's 10, she goes, Daddy, you can't wear eyeliner when you come pick me up at school. And I'm like, wait, why, Mia? I'm like, I've been wearing this every day since I was 13. And she goes, well, all the girls ask, why does your daddy wear makeup? And I said, well, tell them I'm a rocker guy. And she goes, I did. And I go, okay, fine. I won't wear eyeliner when I come pick you up, but the nail polish stays. And she goes, okay. So where that comes into play is because there's no dress up for me. Like there's no dress rehearsal. It's like, I am who I am. I fucking look exactly the same when I go on stage. I might put on a nicer jacket. But and then with, with Guns N' Roses comparison, it's like Guns N' Roses was street rock. Like they had the blues hard rock, but like Duff brought the whole punk rock element to it. And then you had Izzy that brought like the Stones element to it. You know what I mean? So and they were street, they had that punk rock thing. And I'm very influenced by punk rock. I mean, I just saw GBH the other night with my wife, one of my favorite bands ever from the UK, a very legendary punk rock band. But then, I love Bon Scott, and I love, or STP, like talk about swagger. Like, I mean, Scott Weiland, man, was the definition of the swagger. And their music, STP, they had that groove where he kind of played off that live, and so I hope that kind of answers what you are saying.
It does.
Yeah.
You mentioned STP, like that goes back to market labeling. One of the things, like STP got lumped in with the grunge and all that. I know it's marketing because they were really more of just a classic rock band, and they really had 70s influences. They weren't coming out of glam rock as much, and they weren't, maybe a little bit, but they weren't coming out of they weren't a carbon copy of Pearl Jam or anything. They really were their own thing, but with like obvious influences.
Yeah, like Dean was like Jimmy Page influence all the way, and his tones and his grooves, and there's such craftsmen at songwriting. Like, dude, they would have these huge hooks and be in and out, in 3 minutes. I loved how, I learned from STP, like, get in the hook and get out of the hook as quick as
Right.
possible. And but then you have Scott and Rob, who were heavily influenced by punk rock. So that's another dynamic where, it worked, like when you blend a bunch of musical styles together, that's when you come up with your own sound.
Exactly.
So
I mean, yeah, because if one of your influences is Zeppelin, well, they were pulling from a bunch of different people. They were pulling from blues and
right,
English folk and all kinds of stuff. They were
right,
pulling
right.
from, Muddy Waters and Burt Jansen. I mean, they were all kinds of stuff that was all over the
Yeah,
map. So all the best
yeah,
bands
yeah.
do.
The next single that's coming out, it's called Dirty Halo. We just shot the video for it. And man, it's about all my friends that have passed away, and some of them I mentioned specifically, like Todd and another my old crew guy Damon, who passed away from cancer, and we just lost Wayne Sweeney from Saliva, who was a dear friend of mine, and um, and Dirty Halo is about, we're all human, we all make mistakes, we're all flawed, and like the chorus is, I don't mind your dirty halo, like I accept you for you, and I would expect the same, but if not, that's okay. But I accept people for who they are at this point. I'm not trying to change anyone, none of that shit. And one of my friends, he was an A&R guy, man, he was on dialysis and he stopped going. I was like, bro, I'm like, please, like, you're going to die. Like, don't go out like this. And he chose to die, and I begged him to live. Like, you really can't save anyone. I've tried, and saving people that shit might kill you too, trying to save someone. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess if somebody's made that decision, you can try to influence their decision, but it's theirs to make, I guess. And
But
you
I think one of the key elements in life is being able to confront your pain and take a hard look at yourself, in order
sure.
to heal. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's true. Or do you have tour plans?
Yeah, we're getting all of that ironed out, right now. Hopefully, it's we're in discussions right now about finally going over to Europe. We have a big fan base over there in the UK and Europe. And then over here, I put it out there with the guys in the band. They're booking agent as well. We would love to do direct support for Buck Cherry. I think we would help each other.
I can see that.
There are, I've known Josh for years, and that's our genre. And we're the ones carrying the flag for that genre here in the States. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
little more. There's also another band called Kickin' Valentina out of Atlanta, who are friends of mine that are, you know, up tempo, kind of kick ass rock and roll as well. But it's few and far between nowadays. And I think if one band comes along, it can light it all up on fire again, where
You
people
never
love the
know.
rock.
It's funny because I'm not aware of Kicking Valentina, and it's sad. I'm actually from Atlanta, but I left there.
Oh wow,
I left there 30 years ago. When I hit
yeah,
18, I haven't lived there since, so I don't really know Atlanta anymore.
yeah,
It's my scene, but as far as the bands getting back like that, you're starting to see, and it's not the same vein as you, but like even on social media, like your Instagram, your TikTok, you're starting to see a big resurgence in like the kids who can really play guitar, like virtuosic. And that would have been, you would have never seen that in the 90s and early 2000s. That was a no-go. Um,
yeah,
and so it seems to be getting acceptable and popular again, just rock and aggressive music. So I'd like to see them make a comeback, because we're like, oh, rock is dead, but it's been a long time and everything comes back around, and maybe we've been around
yeah.
long enough to see it come back. It's one of those things. I mean, you got young
I,
bands
I
like
mean,
Greta Van Fleet, who are coming back with a real 70s like Zeppelin Queen type vibe and that kind of
yeah,
thing.
I love, I love that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
people talk a lot of smack about that band, but guess what? They're out there touring, they're doing shit, and their music is hitting, and good for them. You know what I mean? And
Hey,
there's nothing wrong with having influences and stuff. I mean, Wasn't Zeppelin sued a couple times because for plagiarism? I mean, I don't know. I love Led Zeppelin, but I'm just saying, it kind of
Yeah.
is the name of the game. Everybody copies everybody, as Gene Simmons says. So
Yeah, I mean, Rush's first album, they were trying to be Led Zeppelin. The first album before Neil Peart joined, they were just doing
yeah, yeah,
bluesy Zeppelin rock. It was nothing like
right,
the.
right,
So everybody
yeah,
comes from
yeah,
somewhere, and yeah, Greta Van Fleet, they're talented as hell, and they're making their way. Good for them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's great.
But yeah, so if you guys get touring, you think you'll be able to hit as far as stateside, the East Coast? I'm in Philly right now. Is the reason I ask.
Oh man, we've played in Philly. But yeah, Philly's, New York, I mean, Chicago, we've played all these places. Cleveland, Dallas, Seattle. I mean, we do really well in the Midwest. Detroit, we've done super well. But yeah, we're gonna hit all those places. When we played Whiskey Dick's in Philly the last time, I
Yeah.
think it's been closed for a while. That was a wild ass night. Then we went to, of course, we went to Geno's and all
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Gotta go to
I
Genius.
remember we were in front of Constitution, we were in front of Constitution Hall, and I was with my drummer, and I asked the cop, I'm like, "What's that place? Did they sign some things there?" And the cop's like, yeah,
Yeah. Couple papers.
yeah."
Well, that's cool. Now, what was the biggest hurdle for you? I mean, obviously, well, that's a dumb way to phrase it because obviously you had a ton of hurdles, but after your hiatus and all the personal stuff going on and the loss, what was the kick that you said, okay, I'm getting back in the saddle, getting back in the studio and writing again? What was it? What was the turning point, or was it gradual?
It was the ayahuasca thing was a huge thing. And then it was kind of a gradual thing, but then I also went to this clinic in Rosarito Beach in Mexico, and I did this plant medicine. I had this plant medicine treatment called Ibogaine, which was another huge, huge event in my life. But it was all, it was collective. Like, I had to get back in shape mentally, physically, spiritually. I just had to be ready to do it again. Because putting out those records, the first four, I mean, especially Back to Momo, like that's a kick-ass rock and roll record. Like
Yeah,
it's been compared to Appetite, it's been compared to Rocks and stuff. And like monetarily, it didn't do shit. And yeah, the press loved it and all kinds of people loved it, but like that also took its toll on me too, man, where I was just like,
sure.
I'm putting out this quality music and like we're not getting any love back. However, with that said, one of the biggest, setbacks Blacklist Union has had is not a good team behind us,
Mm,
and now industry wise, we have a good team behind us. Paul Crosby is now my manager. He was the drummer in Saliva. I've been friends with those guys for years. He became a successful manager, and now he's managing me in Blacklist Union. We have a couple of publicists that are really good. Um, we had to assemble a kick-ass team of solid
sure.
people, and you know, that's vital. So,
Oh, I'm sure. I
but
mean,
that
you're
shit,
you're trying to swim
yeah,
upstream if you don't have the people behind you helping you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out, and I'll be keeping up with your social media and looking out for tour dates and all that it materializes. And speak of that, before we go, what's the best way for the fans to keep up with Blacklist Union? Like, what's the most active socials, or is it just your website, or what's the best avenue?
I mean, all of it. Just Google Blacklist Union, and we're on every platform, and all of them are active. And if it's not me engaging, it's somebody close to the band or a band member. So any messages will always get to me directly, or whoever you want to talk to in the band or associated with the band. So we're not hard to find.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, I really appreciate it, Tony, and you're welcome
Yeah,
back
nice chatting
anytime.
with you.
Oh, absolutely,
Right on.
man. Anytime you want to come back on, love to chat more with you. We can get some more in depth on all the stuff you've got to share.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. All right,
All
bye.
right, take care.